Hi, Kevin Coop here, and this is FaceTime with the Content Guy, coming to you this cloudy morning from the campus of Portland State University in Oregon, where I've begun my summer adjunctivity. So there was a Wall Street Journal story the other day that caught my attention because it talked about how retailers are, well, some retailers anyway, are sort of taking the radical approach of focusing on having less inventory, not more. One of the companies that was cited in the article was Home Depot. Apparently Home Depot's decided they don't want to have, floor-to-ceiling displays of merchandise. They want to have less merchandise. They want to have it within reach of the customer because they think that's going to be more effective in building sales long term. The story also cited Walmart and Target and talked about how they want to have less inventory. Walmart's even widening the aisles to make it harder for them to have more inventory. Now, the mathematical calculation here, the financial calculation, is pretty simple. If they can have less inventory but grow sales, it means the company's more profitable. That's a good thing. But I'm not sure. But in a lot of ways, when I hear about what they're planning, it sounds an awful lot like something that used to be called efficient consumer response, ECR. The ECR is a concept that was created by consultants back in, I think of it as the Jurassic era. And basically what the idea was to be as efficient as possible in order to combat a small company that was starting to get into the grocery business. That company was Walmart. And basically what they wanted to do is they wanted to develop a financial construct that would allow them to be more efficient and more profitable to compete with Walmart, which at the time, they pretty much just decided to get into the grocery business. Now, if there's a reason that ECR didn't have the kind of staying power that one might have thought, part of it was it didn't solve everybody's problems in 2 or 3 years, and so people moved on to something else. But it's also because a lot of companies forgot about the consumer part. They were pretty good at efficiency. They could figure out places in the supply chain where they could make cuts and they could get products to the store more effectively. They could and try and do things that way. But they weren't good at necessarily thinking about what the consumer wants. Because after all, if you want to be efficient and relevant to the consumer, it doesn't mean always having the least amount of merchandise. Sometimes it means having merchandise the customer wants, but not too many customers want. But that's the way you build your brand overall. You can't look at it in a vacuum. They weren't good about thinking about the customer part, and it sort of faded away. The thing about algorithms is you can use them to analyze behavior and react to them. Algorithms are not so great at trying to force people to behave a certain way. Now, I've had to sort of always chuckle at this stuff because for most of the last 30 years, I've been shopping at a store called Stu Leonard's in Norwalk, Connecticut. And Stu Leonard's, basically has 2,000 items. The store I've shopped in, basically, they're a private company, but it's always been said, 2,000 items and they do about $2 million a week in sales or more. That's pretty efficient if you ask me. The thing is that what they want to do is they don't have everything. They make no bones about it. They don't have everything. You're going to have to shop someplace else probably. But most of what they have is fresh and most of what they have is private label. That's just the way it works. What they do have is a very strong sense of who they are and what they are and what they're trying to do. And they have a compelling story to tell. You walk in that front door and you take a very directed traffic flow. You know what the Stu Leonard story is all about. And that's become a compelling thing for people for many, many decades. And that's gotten them through, some good times and some bad times. And I really admire them for that. One of the things they do is, as they tell you a story, you tell the story when you walk in the front door, and they tell you a story about their shopping experience as you walk through the store, and then they're happy to collect your money on the way out. Works pretty well. The key of this, and this is not rocket science, is having a sense of A, who you are, and B, who your customer is, and putting those together in a way that's really relevant, and yes, efficient. But efficiency can't be the bottom line for everything. If you're only trying to be efficient, it's simply not going to work. And the thing is, I have to tell you, as I read the journal story, I was thinking to myself, well, you tell me. Okay, the journal story this week talks about companies taking a low inventory approach. But would any of us be surprised if a year from now, the journal ran a story about how retailers have discovered that it's a high inventory approach that's going to make the most sense. And they're going to switch gears because maybe low inventory didn't solve all their problems. Maybe the problems didn't have everything to do about inventory. At the end of the day, these companies are looking to solve problems. And the best way to understand how to solve problems is to have a kind of a sandpaper feel for what your customer wants, what your customer thinks, what your customer needs. That's how you do it. Now listen, not everybody can be Stu Leonard's, not everybody should be Stu Leonard's. And a 5-store company has a very different issues than, say, a 50-store company, a 500-store company, or a 5,000-store company. But it's all got to start with the consumer, or otherwise it's never going to work. That is the key, at least as far as I'm concerned. Now, there are always going to be fans out there of kind of cool, innovative ideas, and that's a good thing. I mean, Morning Newsbeat sort of exists to identify cool, innovative ideas and sort of put them in context. Trying to do it before other publications or websites do. I was kind of interested that basically last week at FMI, Nadia Shorabura was there, and she was speaking at an event, and she was talking about her company, which is called Pointer. And basically what Pointer does is they have a low inventory approach. It focuses very much on robotics, and it's a really interesting approach to retailing that she pioneered up in Seattle with these jeans stores, in essence. The thing about it is, it was like a big deal last week to some people. I was writing about these guys more than 3 years ago here on Morning Newsbeat. The interesting thing is, when I was in Seattle not too long ago, I wanted to go visit their store and see how it had evolved. In fact, their stores were closed. Okay, the stores that they used to operate aren't there anymore. I suspect that's because the folks at Pointer have decided that actually being a retail consultancy is more profitable than actually being a retailer. And listen, I have no problem with that. I think their idea, in a lot of ways, is a good one. And I'll put a link into the text version of the story so you can go back and look at the thing that I did before. But the thing is, once again, what they were doing is not a magical key that solves all your problems. It can be a strategy, it can be a tactic. But if you don't have a fundamental understanding of who your consumer is and what the consumer wants, then all the magic keys in the world aren't going to do you any good. There are no doors that those are going to unlock. Now listen, it's not just companies like Stu Leonard's who have figured this out. There are a lot of retailers who have figured this out. Wegmans, Winco, H-E-B, Dorothy Lane Market. There are great retailers who have figured out different approaches to how to approach the marketplace. But it has to do with knowing who you are, and it has to do with knowing who the customer is. Okay? And inventory has to be a reflection of those things, not a cause. Anyway, that's what's on my mind. It's Thursday morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.